afternoon. Welcome again for this tutorial working on Learning Unit 9, mainly on consolidating preference shares. We will just go through a presentation that was also provided for the first classes. Immediately after going through the facet classes, then we'll immediately start with question 1, which is on your letter and on the previous schedule. But quickly, what we will just quickly work on now is just getting through the presentation just for the rules for anyone who will try to join us whilst we are on the session. Important thing, please remember to switch off your phone, your video on your side as you are connecting. Please mute your microphone. It does cause a bit of background echo, which interrupts for anyone else to hear this video. Very important, please write your student number in the chat. Have your calculator ready. We'll use it in doing some quick analysis and some quick calculations. I am working on Excel, so I will also try to use that as my calculator. I do have a calculator in front of me. If you've got any queries relating to previous recordings, today's recordings, please email your query to ctntat@unisa.ac.za. If you have any query with regard to your connection as well, you may touch base with them. There's also a feedback, which is very important for providing an evaluation to UNISA. It's found where you will be putting your student number in the chat. Next to the chat is file, where you will see a feedback form. You complete it electronically and you submit it as well. So that is basically the rules. Let me see. Thank you, Palisa, for putting that on, and a very good day to you too. Chisango, I'm still waiting for you to quickly put your student number as well. Please do not forget on the chat to put your student number there as well. So let us quickly move on. But without moving on, but we'll share this again as we continue. Today we are covering Learning Unit 9, mainly the treatment of preference shares during consolidation. We will be doing question 1, which is on page 234 and 235, but we'll come to that part just now. We'll just share a presentation in a few minutes, and then we will be doing cash flow the next time that we meet. But in the last 5 minutes, we'll recap on this again. So let us quickly look at the presentation. I will keep reflecting on MS Teams. If you have got any issues, please do capture them on MS Teams. That is, if you've got any query as we're going along, please capture it. Then I can be able to respond to you immediately as you ask the question. So quickly, we're dealing with preference, treatment of preference dividends. Last time, we dealt with ordinary dividends, which is what the ordinary shareholders are treated in terms of dividends. We spoke about arrear dividends, declaration, and when dividends are paid. So we spoke about that. So today we'll learn more of a new concept when it comes to preference shares. So why is it important? A preference share. So the question is, why is a preference share important? A preference share have a preference right to dividends. So what does this mean? It means ordinary shareholders can only receive dividends once preference dividends have been declared. So we've got different preference dividends. You've got cumulative preference shares that have a right to preference. It means that even if they were not paid in the previous year, they accumulate, so they grow. You will pay them in the future years, which means that cumulative preference shares can be paid from what is owed, the arrear, and the current year, before any other classes of dividends are paid. So in terms of the calculation, just to give you a glimpse, a preference always have a fixed percentage. So it's a fixed percentage. When you are seeing preference shares on any financial statement, it will either be 9%, 8%, 20%. That 9% there is indicating a fixed amount of dividend. It's a fixed amount of dividend over the value of preference shares. So when it comes to ordinary dividends, they are declared at an annual general meeting at the end of the year, and then they are paid. So how they are declared, you'll be told that per share, it will be 6 cents or it will be 6 rand. Then per shareholder, you multiply that 6 cents, multiplying their shareholding portfolio. But when it comes to preference shares, that percentage indicates that they are fixed, meaning that you have to pay them. It's sort of an interest. You have to pay them that dividend of 9% each year. Similarly, if you were having debentures, that percentage also signifies, when it comes to debentures, an interest. When it comes to preference shares, a dividend. So here is an example where you are told that a company has 309% preference shares. So how many shares? 300 shares to the value of 400,000. So in each year, when you calculate the dividend, it's not going to be declared. So after each completion of each year, you will have to pay a dividend of 9%, which is 400,000 times 9% is equal to 36,000. That 36,000 is your preference dividend. So a preference is always expressed as a percentage of value, a preference dividend, and not of an amount of shares. Here is an example. A subsidiary has 10% preference shares to the value of 50,000, 40% of preference shares, and 75% of ordinary shares owned by parent. So this simply means a parent can will not have the same interest of shareholding in terms of ordinary shares and preference shares. So you have different shareholding, and this you'll pick up when we are working on analysis of equity. So the statement of changes in equity of a subsidiary will show a 5,000 dividends paid in the current year, 5,000 being 50% times 10%. It means nothing was in arrears. It is 1 year's dividend. So in this case, we're speaking about dividends that are paid. So we're speaking about dividends that are paid in the current year. So here is how the analysis is going to work. One, we'll go through this in the study guide again. It is encouraged that you must always have two types of analysis: analysis of equity, analyzing ordinary shares; analysis of equity, analyzing preference shares. So in this case, at the top, you've got ordinary analysis, where in the current year, preference dividend, which is an expense, will reduce your profit and will reduce your non-controlling interest and your parent. So your parent here is owning 75%, your non-controlling interest is owning 25%. But when it comes to preference analysis, we transfer this profit where these preference dividends were supposed to be paid off here. We show 5,000, but the shareholding or the interest in shareholding now differs because the parent now in a preference is 40% and the NCI is 60%. So the dividend will still paid, will still be a percentage. We'll speak about this 5,000 and 3,000 again. So remember, we do not take preference dividend into account twice in the two analyses. We merely transfer a profit of amounting to 5,000 from the ordinary analysis to the preference analysis so that it can be distributed as a dividend according to the correct percentage. Remember to take goodwill and non-controlling interest from both analyses when doing the statement of financial position. So we are going to be covering this on question 1. So initially we just spoke about preference dividends paid. So the second classification of preference dividend or type is cumulative preference dividends. So we're speaking about, when we're saying cumulative preference dividends, we're saying they accumulate from when they were not paid in the previous years. So we're saying here still in arrears, but have not been declared. So it has not been declared, but it is in arrears. So you are told, example, 100,000, 12% shares, 12,000 for 1 year, parent hold 10%. In arrears for 2 years, have to provide for it. It will declare it before any other dividend can be declared. So when we're doing an analysis of equity from ordinary perspective, so since acquisition, you will have beginning of the year, 12,000 reducing your retained earnings. And in the current year as well, you will have 12,000 reducing your current year as well. So the last year which was not paid and this year which is not paid. But when it comes to preference dividend analysis, since acquisition, we will add, so we'll transfer the profit where you have paid this dividend and we'll transfer it in the current year as well, but we do not make a provision for paid yet. So which means your interest here would grow up until you have an expenditure. So here we're speaking about arrear preference dividends paid since then. So a preference dividend of 12,000 per year for last 2 years have been declared and paid at year end. So in ordinary analysis, we have to decrease our retained earnings and profit by the dividend payment. But in your analysis of equity, you will first transfer the profit from ordinary analysis into since beginning of the current year and also in the profit, and then we'll also declare what was declared will also be subtracted as 24,000. So arrear preference dividend and paid since then, this will be the journal. Remember here, it's the percentage. So when it comes to the parent has 10% and the non-controlling interest have 90%. Right, so that is the main part of the presentation. We therefore move, for you to be able to understand the presentation part, we therefore move to page 234 and 235. I will speak about the examples that are provided here, but because of time, we do not have time to discuss that. But as I'm concluding, I'm going to be talking about the examples that have been provided in example 1, 2, and 3. And in terms of the questions that are there, the 3 questions as well, question 1, 2, and 3 as well. So let me just go and see if there's anything in the theory, but I think we have covered everything in the theory. If we have not covered anything, you may still be able to go back and study whatever we have not covered. But the most important thing for you to know is that a preference dividend holds both the liability and an equity. So it is a financial instrument, but in this syllabus of your FAC2602, we do not classify financial instrument. It is assumed that a preference shares provide monetary redemption by issuer of shares for a fixed amount at a fixed future date, where payment of dividends are compulsory, are classified as financial liabilities. Such an investment is not consolidated. In all other preference shares are assumed to be non-redeemable, therefore as equity instruments. So in this particular course, we will assume all preference shares are classified as equity, hence consolidated when applicable. So the consolidation, it is recommended that we always draw up two separate analyses of owner's equity. So we'll do that part as well. So let us quickly see our question 1. So this is question 1 that we are going to perform. And in question 1, we are told that the following represent the condensed statement of financial position of K Ltd and its subsidiary Ltd. So as at 28 February 20.2, so it's always important for you to note the dates. So which means that the beginning of this financial year starts on 1 March 20.1. So so you've got your asset, equity, and liabilities for K and L Ltd. You've got additional information, which we'll come to now. We are required to consolidate, to draft the consolidated statement of financial position of K Limited Group as at 28 February 20.2 in compliance with the requirements of IFRS. Notes are not required. We must show all calculations. We must show all calculations. So we are given land and buildings at cost 80,000, 75,000. Investment in LLTD at fair value. We are given ordinary shares. We are given 8% cumulative preference shares. We remember cumulative preference shares, they accumulate from the previous year. This 8% here signifies the amount of dividend that we are going to be paying. We've got loan to KLTD. So as you are reading, you can already put in, we can already put in comments because we suspect that this might be an intra-group transaction. So this might be an intra-group transaction, as well as this one. So we know this might be an intergroup transaction and this one intergroup transaction. We have to eliminate this investment when we are doing journal entries as part of our calculations. We've got share capital, 40,000 is the subsidiary, 50,000 shares is for the parent, same amount, 100,000, 100,000. We've got 8% cumulative preference shares, 20,000, 40,000 and 20,000 shares, 40,000. So which means if we have got 8,000, we have to say 8,000 divided by 20,000 shares to get the percentage that we are holding. So additional information, everything else seems normal. Remember, these balances are provided as per end of the year, which is the same year that we are required to do consolidated statement of financial position. KLTD, the parent, acquired interest in LLTD on 1 March 20.1 at the beginning of the year. Retained earnings were 20,000 at the beginning of the year. On the date of acquisition, it was decided to revalue LLTD's land upwards with an amount of 20,000. So this 20,000 becomes revaluation surplus. Please do not forget that first transaction. Other than that, consider the carrying amount of all other assets and liabilities of LLTD to be equal to the fair value thereof. LLTD's preference dividends are in arrears for 2020 year. So remember, we have acquired this entity LLTD in the current year. So this is in arrears in the current year. With effect from 1 March, so this means we will not have opening inventory because acquisition happened in the year that the year that we are reporting on. So KLTD purchased some of its inventories from LLTD. LLTD sold its inventories to KLTD at a cost 33.33% on 28 February at cost plus 33.33%. On 28 February 20.2, KLTD had inventories to the value of 5,000 on hand, which it had purchased from LLTD. So, which means on closing inventory, we have to take out what you call unrealized profit. So we'll come to taking out here unrealized profit. This is closing. On 2 January 20.2, KLTD sold a non-depreciable asset with a cost price of 10,000 to LLTD. So at a cost of 25%. So there is an unrealized profit made out of a non-depreciable asset. Cash to the value of 4,000 in respect of last consignment of inventories that KLTD purchased from LLTD was still in transit on 28 February 20.2. So we've got this 4,000 that we must deal with. So it's no longer inventories, it's cash. So please do not be confused. It's cash amount that we are talking about that is still in transit from LLTD. So this amount has not yet been paid by K. It's still in transit. You are told that each share carries 1 vote, and therefore we have to draft consolidated financial statement. So so we'll do analysis of equity, and then eventually we'll do pro forma journal entries, and then we'll do the statement of financial position. So pro forma journal entries are just meant to help you understand this further. So it's just for you understanding it further, making sure that you are in full understanding. I'm just going to ask that the people who just came in now into the class to please on the chat write down their student numbers, Mr. Punguza and Lindo Kushe. If you guys can just remember to just write down your student numbers on the chat as part of showing your attendance in this class. So let us go now, and in the interest of time, please note that I've just done a mini template so that we can be able to save on time. So the first thing that you are told is you must always do a 2 analysis. So we'll have 2 analysis as per the question. So we are doing analysis for LLTD, who is a subsidiary. We are told that we own how many shares? All right, we must still calculate the shares. It's 32 shares over 40,000. So it's 32,000 over 40,000 which is 80,000. I'll show you how I've calculated it as well, so that you are able to get it. It's shareholding for KLTD. It's 80%, which means that the non-controlling interest is going to be 20%. We are going to do analysis of equity, which is going to be in terms of ordinary shares. So we're going to have another worksheet. So the first analysis of equity is for ordinary. And the second one is for preference shares. So we've got one for analysis of equity in terms of ordinary shares, and we've got one which will be for preference shares. So in terms of preference shares, the holding will be 8,000 divided by 20,000. So we may as well as do that. 8,000 divided by 20,000, which gives you 40%. So KLTD has 40% and non-controlling interest has 60%. So just to take you quickly to understand, first thing that we have done is to calculate the interest in terms of shareholding. So for the owner's part, we take the 32,000 shares that we have bought from ordinary shares divided by 40,000, which gives you 80% interest that we share. And from preference shares, we say 8,000 that we have bought divided by 20,000. 8,000 that we have acquired divided by 20,000. KLTD has 40%, non-controlling interest has got 60%. Despite them having more than 50%, we're still calling them non-controlling interest, mainly because it's a technicality in terms of the calculation for just calculating the preference shares. So we're dealing here with preference shares. So let us first work with ordinary shares. So in terms of ordinary shares, at acquisition, we had 100,000 shares. So got share capital. So we might need to share to change the wording a bit now and call it ordinary share capital, so that we are able to pick up, even when you are making an error, the market can be able to pick up where you are talking about ordinary shares and where you are not speaking about ordinary shares. So the idea, this is at acquisition. We've got ordinary share capital of 100,000, which is going to be 100,000 multiplied by 80%. Right, and then the non-controlling interest is going to be multiplied by 20%. It's going to be 20,000. Then we are told that on the acquisition date, which is additional information number 1, the retained earnings were 20,000. So retained earnings, we are told, were 20,000. So the interest changes to be 16,000 and the other one is 4,000. So number 2 says on the date of acquisition, it was decided to revalue land upwards with an amount of 20,000. So all other asset liabilities were carried at fair value. So here we're speaking about revaluation. Surplus. We are told that is 20,000, which means at acquisition you've got 16,000, and then you've got an interest, non-controlling interest of 4,000 again. Then you've got your totals. Right, non-controlling interest 28,000. The other one. Then we want to see what is the consideration and non-controlling interest. So your non-controlling interest will remain at 28,000. So we are looking to see how much is the consideration. The consideration will be found where we say investment at fair value. So the investment was 117. The cost price was 117,000. So it's 117,000, which means that the difference is therefore goodwill. So it's equity represented by goodwill, and this is for the parent and it's not for the NCI. So here we'll have the 5,000, and then we'll have some non-controlling interest and your non-controlling interest at acquisition, non-controlling interest and KLTD's interest. They make up 145,000, which is the total part. So at acquisition, we have found our thing. So we move on and we look what has happened since acquisition. So we look here what has happened since acquisition. So since acquisition, so we're speaking about the current year, which means that to end of current year, we're speaking about let me see if we've got any profit given. We're not given profit, so we're given retained earnings. So the only reason why we're using retained earnings, it's because we've been given retained earnings. So you can note as we're reading the information, it seems we've got some intra-group transactions that we have to account for. So to come back to this, we'll account for them. First, we have to go to calculation on them as pro forma journal entries. Then we'll come back again. So let us do the preference shares. From a preference share perspective, so at acquisition as well, we have added preference share capital. Just go look how much was the preference share capital. Preference share capital, preference share is 20,000. Look, yeah, it's 20,000. So we do not have anything like retained earnings when it comes to this. So the 20,000 is shared between a 2 at acquisition. So you'll note that the non-controlling interest now has got a bigger interest. So we've got here consideration and non-controlling interest. Non-controlling interest will remain to be your 12,000. At acquisition, let us look at how much we acquire this cumulative preference shares for. 8,000, we bought them for 13,000. So we bought them for 13,000, which means that the difference between 13,000 and 8,000 is 5,000, which is again equity. Represented by goodwill of the current, which is 5,000, right? And then from here again, we'll move to since acquisition. Remember what we are asked to do here. We are asked to do what we call as a statement of financial position. So we'll come back to all of this again. So right now we have made 2 analyses. We have stopped halfway just to get a bit of pro forma journal entries, just to make sure that we understand. Please note, in the interest of time, if you are not asked to do pro forma journal entries, don't do them. Just do the calculation. So I'm just helping you here to follow the calculations. But for any future requirements, maybe let us not do pro forma journal entries. Let's do them after we have done the analysis of equity, just to help you with the approach. So in terms of retained earnings, we want to know retained earnings, or call it profit, for this year. So we know what we've been given in terms of retained earnings. We've been given, let us go look, we've been given retained earnings of 34,000. So we have retained earnings of 34,000. In terms of these retained earnings, we must not take out what was there at acquisition. So we must take out what was there. This is given in your question. This is what was there at acquisition, which is 20,000. We have to take out those retained earnings because they were there at acquisition in the beginning. It's just 20,000 here. So we have to take it out here so that we do not include it again, because it was just adding on there. So we go read the information and we see what is going to affect retained earnings. So number 3, we are told LLTD's preference dividends are in arrears for 20.2 financial year. So we are dealing here with preference dividends that are in arrears. Remember that the question told you that we are dealing with cumulative preference shares, so we have to make a provision for this, which is how much? Do we know how much it is? It is 8% multiplied by 13,000. 8% multiplied by 13,000. Let me look again. Right, my bad. For the whole equity, I calculated only for what KLTD holds. So here we're still dealing with the 100% share. So here we're still dealing with the 100% share. So that was just my bet here. We're still dealing with the total means 100%. So here we're still dealing with 100%, which is 20,000 multiplied by 8%, which is your preference dividends. Because it's cumulative, we have to show for it, make a provision for it from our retained earnings. That is 1,600. So we've dealt with number 3. Number 4 tells us with effect from 1 March, KLTD purchased some of its inventories from LLTD. LLTD sold its inventories to KLTD at cost plus 33.5. On 28 February, KLTD had inventories to the value of 5,000. So we have here to calculate unrealized profit on closing inventory. So we have to calculate unrealized profit on closing inventory. So this is going to be, so we've been given so just to show you how you deal with 33 point and whatever it is, all you have to say is 33.333 divided by 133.333 multiplied by 5,000 will give you the value. So this is what I wanted to do. But from another perspective, 33.333 divided by 133.333 gives you about 25%. So this is your 25%. So it's 5,000 that you have been given multiplied by 25%, which gives you 1,250. This is the profit that was made out because this inventory was sold at cost plus 25%, which means you made a profit. You made a profit out of your own group that you are in. So that is definitely not allowed. So that's why we are taking it out again. Right. So we have taken out this profit. We continue reading. So the next thing that we are reading is we have sold KLTD sold. So it's us now selling a non-depreciable asset with a cost price of 10,000 to LLTD. So we have sold to LLTD. So the first one, it's us having purchased inventory. Now we have sold. So which means that I want you to hold on. When we do retained earnings, we are going to have this 25% times percent reduce the retained earnings of a parent. So the sale has been made by the parent. We are doing here analysis of equity for a subsidiary. So let us just put a comment here so that you are able to understand the difference. So here, this channel, we are going to adjust retained earnings of parent as a seller who made profit on sale of asset. So that's basically it. So that's why we are going to do this here, because we're only adjusting for a parent and not a subsidiary. Number 6, cash value to the value of 4,000 in respect of last consignment of inventory. That KLTD purchased from LLTD. We're still in transit. So here we are going to adjust our bank because this is money that's supposed to be coming to our bank account. And we are also going to adjust the other part, which is a liability. So we're going to adjust two parts, a liability and a asset. So let me look now if we are done with our analysis of equity. So from here, it seems we are done with our analysis of equity. So let us see. So this becomes the sum of everything that has been calculated here. We're taking everything here, and this is the amount that we are getting for retained earnings, which means that since acquisition, the retained earnings are 80%, 8,120, and the non-controlling interest is only 20%, which makes 2,230. And then we look at the totals. The totals are going to be some 30,230, 8,120. And then it's going to be 145 plus 11,150, 156, 150, 117. This and this, we're getting that. So we are finished with the analysis of equity from ordinary perspective. So let us do the preference share one. So in the preference share one, to the end in the current year, do we have any dividends that have been paid? No. Number three, extra information number three here told us that the preference shares are in arrears, so which means they have not been paid. So since they have not been paid, these preference dividend that has not been paid in arrears, we are going to add it here. So we are looking here at the total. The total is 20,000 multiplied by 8%, which is 1,600. So it's 20,000 multiplied by 8%, which is 1,600. Please look at the percentage of holding now. So it becomes 40% for when we are working on the KLTD, and it becomes 60% for the non-controlling interest. So I want you to be able to see the change as it happens. So the total here will be 12,150. Here it will be 640, and here it will be let's see, 26,600. Right, that becomes our totals then. So we can be able now to do statement of financial position. Let us look at statement of financial position. We've got property, plant, and equipment, which is made out of land and investment. So we've got here property, plant, and equipment. So in terms of property, plant, and equipment, we are going to add 80,000 and 75,000. And then we're going to add the revaluation. Remember, the revaluation increases the value of the property. So we're going to add the 20,000 for revaluation. And then number 5, we are told that we sold a non-depreciable asset. So non-depreciable asset can either be land or it can be building. So we did it for 25% at cost plus 25%. So that is, we're going to need to say minus here, 20,000 multiply by 25%, which is cost plus, which means therefore it's going to be 80,000 plus 75,000 plus 20,000 minus 2,500, which gives you 172,500. So let's look at our analysis of equity. We also have a goodwill. So we've got a goodwill coming from a ordinary shares and coming from preference shares, both 5,000. So we also indicate that we've got goodwill, which is 5,000 plus 5,000 coming from so it's plus 10,000. Let's look if we've got anything under current assets. Under current assets, the investment here will definitely is going to be eliminated. We've got loan to K. I've told you about the intra-group, but look here. This is 16,000. This is 20,000. I'm going to show you how this works out in the pro forma journal entries in eliminating these two. Then we've got current assets, traded other receivable. Then we are adding 20,000 plus 52,000. Quite straightforward. 20,000 plus 52,000. And then we've got inventories. Inventories is 15,000 plus 19,000 minus. Remember, we've made up some nice money out of here, which is unrealized profit of how much? 1,250. Remember, we've made that unrealized profit of 1,250. Therefore, we have to deduct it as well here. So it becomes 15,000 plus 19,000 minus 1,250, which gives you 32,750 for cash and cash equivalent. Many people are asking, where did you take this one? Because it was not given on number 6. You are told that there is a cash to the value of 4,000 in respect of line consignment, which is still in transit. Remember, here we're working with accrual method, so the 4,000 we put it there, and the other leg of the 4,000 would definitely come here. In terms of the 16,000 of loan to LLTD, and it will become a 4 plus 4,000 gives it 20,000. And then immediately we can be able to what's the word, to eliminate the two transactions. So total asset is going therefore to be everything together 302,250. Then we look at equity and liabilities, equity at the debitable to owners. So the first thing that we have always is share capital. So the share capital now is going to be for both. So we're not going to show the preference and the ordinary share on the statement of financial position. But if you are dealing with statement of changes in equity, you can be able to show this. So we are adding 100,000 and 40,000. The rest of the others will be eliminated. I'm going to show you just now. $100,000, $40,000. And then what else will we have? Retained earnings. The retained earnings is going to be 45,000, which is what the parent has. And then we're going to look at what else was reduced from a parent perspective. So we've got 45,000. Then we go look in the analysis. From the analysis, we must add this 8,920. And immediately, we must also add 640. And so we're adding 8,920. And we're also adding 640. Right, then on information number C5, we are told we sold non-depreciable asset. Remember, I told you we have to adjust the retained earning of a parent as a seller. So the 10,000 times 25% becomes 2,500. So which means that we have here 45,000 plus 8,920 plus 640, then minus 2,500, which gives you 52,060. Do we have revaluation surplus as other components of equity? No, we do not have revaluation surplus. The one that we had is eliminated at acquisition. Then the next thing that we look at will definitely be non-controlling interest. Will be non-controlling interest. So the non-controlling interest we have now to go look at the non-controlling interest. So we've got 30 to 30 from analysis of ordinary shares. So we've got 30 to 30. Then the next one that we must look at is from analysis of preference shares, which is 12,960. 12,960 plus 12,960 is equal to 45,190. So total equity, therefore, is going to be it's going to be 237, 250. All right, here it's 30 to 30. It's going to be 235 to 50. Sorry, my bad. I calculated it incorrectly there. I captured the wrong number. Right. Then we're looking at non-current liabilities. Do we have any non-current liabilities? Loan is going to be eliminated. Then we only have current liabilities. Yes, we only have current liabilities. We do not have current liabilities. We only have these ones, trade and other. Payables. Straightforward, it's 54,000 and 13,000. Plus 13,000. 54,000 plus 13,000, which gives you 67,000. Total equity and liabilities becomes therefore 302,250, which balances with your asset. So let us see how we would have done our pro forma journal entries. So the first pro forma journal entry that would have performed, it is to adjust what would have happened before acquisition. So which means in the books of LLTD, the subsidiary, what would have happened. So we say in the books of, so this is before pro forma journal entries. In LLTD records, so for evaluation, we have had for valuations, would have had land increasing by 20,000, and then would have had revaluation plus as well at 20,000. And this is mainly to account for the revaluation. So this is to record revaluation of land. And then the second one that would have had, it's LLTD would have received in terms of number 6. So K would have paid LLTD. So LLTD's bank would have gone up by 4,000. And then this means that would have had a loan reduced of KLTD. Increased by 4,000 in the books of L. So this loan that is an asset here in the books of L would have decreased by 4,000. Can you guys see that? This 20,000 here would have decreased by this 4,000. So this is recording cash in transit from K Limited to LLTD. So KLTD paid 4,000, which reduces the loan amount. So in terms of at acquisition, so this is at 1 March 20.1. At acquisition, we would have had a share capital. Now I want you to remember this share capital that we're talking about here is for ordinary share, ordinary shares. So we were given it to be. So we are almost now just doing something for understanding. It was 100,000. We were told that we had retained earnings of 20,000. We also had a revaluation surplus of 20,000. We had a goodwill that we calculated of 5,000. If you can look quickly in your analysis of equity, we had investment in LLTD. investment in LLTD, the cost price was 117,000. We had non-controlling interest calculated. Non-controlling interest here it was 28,000. Then it's the two balances, 145 minus 140, which gives you 5,000 for goodwill. And this is elimination of owners' equity of NLTD acquisition. So we're done with the first journal entry. Then the second one happens on the 28th of February, 20.2. 28th of February, 20.2, you are told that there's inventories of 5,000 that are on hand that we have to eliminate the unrealized profit. So to do that, we have to say cost of sales. And we're saying 5,000. 5,000 multiplied by 25%, which is that 33. Or else, so that does not confuse you, divided by 133.33. Then you are going to get 1,250 of cost of sales. Then we also reduce our inventories by 1,250, which means our inventory of 5,000 now becomes 3,750. So this is elimination of intra-group profit on closing inventory. Then we go look at the next information is about non-depreciable asset, which is we are taking out profit on sale of property. This is a non-depreciable asset. This property, the profit will get been recognized, please note, by KLTD, who is the seller. And then we also decrease the property by 2,500. So we first deal with the property. And this is elimination. There is not intra-group profit, so it's unrealized. This is unrealized profit. Elimination of unrealized profit on sale of property. So let us look what else would we be doing. So the next thing that we have to be doing, it is looking at number 3 we will do just now. It is looking at number 3. So we can be able to do number 3. But before number 3, yes, we've got loan for LLTD that's sitting with KLTD. Is an asset, so which is a liability. We've got loan of KLTD that is sitting with LLTD. So you need to understand this. It's the 16,000 and the 16,000. How did we get this? Here for loan that was sitting in LLTD as a sitting in LLTD, which was a loan of KLTD sitting in LLTD. This was an asset in the books of LLTD. So it's loan KLTD, loan KLTD. This was an asset. This is where it was originally 20,000 and we deducted 4,000 that was paid. And then we got 6,000. And this is loan of LLTD. So this is eliminating intra-group loans. So we're done with the loan part. And the next part that we look at now is to look now at your analysis of equity. Analysis of equity, we have dealt with this one at acquisition. We have eliminated it. But since acquisition, we have had retained earnings or for non-controlling interest. So we say in terms of our pro forma journal entries, we say retained earnings of 230, and we credit non-controlling interest, which is statement of financial position. And this is a recording of profit of non-controlling interest in the current year. And then we look in the preference shares. We have to do what we did for ordinary shares. So for the preference shares, what we're going to do is we're going to say preference share capital, which is how much? 20,000. And we look at investment in LLTD. The investment was 13,000. This was the cost price, 13,000. And then we look at how much is the non-controlling interest. Non-controlling interest is 12,000. And our goodwill was 5,000. Goodwill was 5,000, and this is eliminating of at acquisition, and this relates to preference shares. And therefore, we can go in the beginning, first one, and say at acquisition relates to ordinary shares. Right. So the next thing we look at analysis of equity. We've got this preference dividend that has not been paid, that is in arrears. So in the pro forma journal entries, what we are therefore going to have, it is because remember this has not been paid, so it's adding to the retained earnings because it's not yet been paid. So it's being accounted for 960, and then we've got non-controlling interest, SFP. It becomes 160,000, and then we've got recording of profits of NCI, and this relates to preference shares. And then you are done with everything: pro forma journal entries, statement of profit or loss, analysis of equity for the preference shares and for the ordinary shares. So you are done with everything which was required. We have done that. statement of financial position as at 28 February 20.2, and you were required to do this for let's look at the required quickly. This was for KLTD group, so it was for KLTD group. KLTD group. With that being done, I'll upload the solution for you guys to have access of it on the other resources. Mainly, very important, I want us just to quickly go through example 1, example 2, and example 3, and I'll just talk you through over them. We're not gonna do them, and because you need to understand them. Example 1, preference dividend is outstanding for 1 year. It's declared must still be provided for. So in example 1, you are given statement of financial position, statement of changes in equity, and you are required to do consolidated statements. So everything else that they do is the same as what we have done. The difference is for you to learn now in terms of preference shares is if a preference share has been declared, so in this case, you are told that no preference shares were in arrears. Provision must have been made for 20.9 preference dividend declared by both companies. So where do we go and look for preference declared? We go and look. The preference that must be declared is 12% preference shares. 12% preference shares, which means that is 12% multiplied by 10,000 for BLTD. For ALTD is 12,000 multiplied by 20,000. So in analyzing the, let's look, A, acquired its interest, so B, now analyzing owner's equity of B, we're going to have profit for the year, which is given, 12,000 is given, here is 12,000, profit for the year, here is 12,000 given here for B, and you have to calculate preference dividends. Preference dividends will be 12% multiplied by 10,000 because they've been declared. So it's 1,200 that you deduct from the profit. On the preference share, you have to transfer the profit of 1,200 before deducting it here again. So this is not repeating it. This is mainly transferring the profit that you will use to deduct the preference dividend on. And when you are doing your journal entries, you are going to say for preference dividends, you are going to say, so here was the preference dividends 408 and 720. You are going to say non-controlling interest first, 720, the profit, and then you're going to indicate that this has not been paid, it's proposed. So this is dividends payable of 720, and therefore also decrease the non-controlling interest. So which means that in your liabilities, you're going to have dividends payable of 720, and then you're gonna have other dividends payable coming from the parent. On your statement of changes in equity, you're going to have in your retained earnings 12% for retained dividends, and then in your non-controlling interest, you're going to have for your preference dividends again. So number 2 says, example 2 says, preference dividends are still in arrears, have not been declared. So that is the same example as what we have done now. So it's exactly what we have done now in question 1. So let us look at example 3. Example 3, it's about arrear preference dividend paid since then. So the preference is 12%. You only have that of a subsidiary. which means that's 12% times 100,000, which is 12%. So in your analysis of equity, you're going to have area preference dividends of 12,000, which was not paid the previous year, and which is now paid in the current year. It was declared, it was not paid, it was only paid in the current year. So in this year, it is an area. In this year, we have paid it. So you do it in terms of the interest of ownership. But when it comes to preference shares, the one that was not paid, we have to add it first from the previous year, and we show nothing. And in the current year, we add another. So here, this is not preference dividend, it's a profit that was meant to pay the preference dividend. So in the current year, you also have a profit that is meant to pay this year's preference owners. So it's a profit attributable to preference owners. So once you have paid 24,000, you also multiply it by the percentage of ownership. So for preference and ordinary shares, it wouldn't be the same. And this would then affect both your profit before tax, and it will also affect your, of course, your consolidated statement, pro forma journal entries, and as well as your statement of changes in equity. Question 2, paid preference dividends have not been paid, and they were only paid at a later stage. So you will be able to do, because it's another example. And then on question 3, you've got another one, which is testing. What is it saying about preference dividend? 6%. No adjustment has been made. So please do these calculations. These questions, example 1 to example 3, question 2 and question 3, very nice questions for you to understand what we have gone through, and for you to be able to work on this on your own. Go through the presentation. Go through the presentation again to be able to understand everything that we have done. Go through the presentation again. Look at the question that we have done. I will post the solution. Work through the solution. Once you have worked through the solution, very important as well is to please make sure that you go through the other examples. We've also been, if you look in your charts, you've also been given a link where you can get your solutions. So let me quickly look at Palisa. Under PPE, how come it's 20,000 times 25%? So let us look at this question again under PPE to respond to Palisa. So under PPE, Palisa, let's look at the question. Right, under PPE, you are told, sorry, you are correct. You are correct. Under PPE, it's going to be 10,000. Sorry, it's going to be 10,000. It's not 25,000, it's 10,000 times 25%. Yes, you are correct, Palisa. It's 10,000 times 25%. That was a typo error. It's 10,000 times 25%. That was a typo error. I've just subsequently corrected that as well. So please perform all other questions. If you've got questions, we still have another opportunity to meet again. where we'll be doing cash flows, both direct and indirect cash flow, which will be on Saturday from 8:30. The class will conclude at 11 o'clock. We will do the direct method and the indirect method. If by any chance you have any questions related to anything that we have covered in the past, you are welcome to post it there for me to be able to see it and respond to any queries that you may have. But most importantly, when it comes to preference dividend, please note it can be paid, it can be in arrear, it can be in arrear in the previous year, arrear in the current year, and paid. So do all these examples, try to apply them. But the next time that we are meeting, we'll work on cash flows. If there's any questions that were posted, I will respond to them by writing, and we'll see if there's a need to touch base on that again. Very important, please do not forget to submit your assignments sooner. And remember, your exams are venue-based, so it's important that you prepare for your home ground so that you've got a home ground advantage. If you've got family, try to use a similar time that will be writing an exam to get a bit of space from them to be able to write your exam. With that said, all the best for you guys to please practice example 1 to example 3 of this topic, and also question 2 and question 3. It's testing everything that I also did not cover in terms of question 1, but I covered it in terms of the presentation. Please note, for you to understand this module, it's very important that you practice. So please continue doing your own effort, putting your own effort on your side, and all the best till we meet again on the 9th of May from 8:30, when we will be doing the cash flow. Thank you very much. Keep well and enjoy the rest of your evening.